Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see Dr. Maldaseina, who nowadays is the most influential theoretical physicist. He has started his journey back in Argentina, continued his studies in the United States, where he's a professor at Princeton University. Dr. Maldaseina has made seminal contributions to string theory and quantum gravity. Back in 1997, he has introduced the gas-gravity duality and has been awarded with a prestigious Breakthrough Prize in fundamental physics in 2012. Hello, Dr. Maldaseina. How are you?
Hello, how are you? Very well.
With me, I will introduce you to my co-host, Michael Good, physics professor at Nazarbayev University. He will take over the difficult stuff of our interview.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you here with us, Professor Maldaseina.
Okay, wonderful to talk to you.
I would like to start with the first question. First of all, the main goal of this interview is to inspire young generations of scholars in Central Asia and Caucasus. So again, thank you very much. My first question will be, what inspired you to pursue Korean physics in academia? What drew you to this field?
When I was a child, my father liked to fix things in the house, fixing the washing machine, fixing the car, and I would help him. And this inspired me to learn more about technology, how everyday appliances work, be it the washing machine, the car, the TV, etc. And by learning about that, I got interested in technology and in how technology uses the laws of physics. That made me interested in the laws of physics themselves. And when I was ending my high school education, so before going to university, I read some popular physics books, and they made me more interested in physics. And I really, at the time, didn't know what physics was like and what a career in physics would be. So I decided to try it out, to try studying physics, to see what it was like. And I liked it, and I continued studying physics. So I studied physics first in Argentina, and then when I finished my undergraduate, I came to the US to do my PhD, and then I continued in the academic physics career, which consists of some research positions and eventually becoming a professor at the university, where you teach and you also do research.
That's great. So there are two pillars of modern physics: quantum theory of the world of the small, which describes atoms, light, elementary particles, and general relativity, which describes the world of the large, gravity, galaxies, cosmos. How does your work help to reconcile these two pillars of modern physics, just in general, for the audience?
Yeah, so the idea that we want to reconcile it becomes important when we think about certain processes in the universe. So for everyday physics, we can treat these two as somewhat separate, but in the beginning of the Big Bang, it's important to treat them together because matter was very concentrated, and the quantum effects or fluctuations or statistical fluctuations or quantum fluctuations of the matter were important and affected strongly the space-time. It's basically, that's the main motivation for trying to understand how to put these two together, or to understand this problem of describing space-time in quantum mechanical language, or quantum mechanical terms. Now, the work I've been involved and that many other people are pursuing also consists of describing certain model universes, so universes that do not have a Big Bang, but are still described by the laws of gravity, using quantum theory, using theories of quantum particles. And the central idea is that very strongly interacting theories of quantum particles can develop their own space-time. They develop an emergent space-time that is described by Einstein's theory of relativity. So in a way, somewhat similar to how when you have many, let's say, molecules of water, they can develop the surface of the lake, for example, of a water surface. At the level of the microscopic molecules, this surface is not very well defined, but at very long distances, we see a very clear surface where, for example, insects can walk on, or a surfer can surf on, etc. The idea is that space-time is something somewhat similar to that, that is not fully well defined at very short distances, but takes its shape when you look at it at long distances.
That's cool. So emergence is, you're very well known in the scientific community for, of course, the ADS CFT correspondence, this anti-de Sitter conformal field theory correspondence. Can you maybe, as a challenge, as low technical jargon as possible, describe the relevance of it for our de Sitter universe?
Yeah, so this correspondence that we've been working on is for universes that do not expand. They are called and that are curved. They are called anti-de Sitter universes. That's just a technical name. Our universe is expanding, so it's not of that kind. It's sometimes called de Sitter, so it's an expanding universe. And the most simple suggestion or possible application, though we don't understand the technical details, would be to think that there is some theory we can define at, let's say, the present moment with particles and interactions that only exist at the present moment, where the whole past history is embedded in those particles and interactions and comes out of those interactions. But the past history is not really present in the fundamental description. So that's would be the simplest generalization, but this is a generalization that has not been understood in detail. What has been understood in detail is the situation where the universe is not expanding.
Okay, I see. So with respect to the holographic principle, which has gained a lot of attention recently, it's interesting to think about the universe as a type of hologram. Can you comment on the holographic principle and its relationship to your work?
Yes, so this description I was mentioning before of describing gravity in terms of the theory of particles has the peculiar feature that the particles live sort of at the boundary of the space, so on a surface which was one dimension less than the full dimensions of space-time. So if we wanted to describe, let's say, our three-dimensional space, these particles will live on a sphere very far away. It is as if someone is looking at the crystal ball and there is something going on in the interior of the crystal ball, but everything is happening on the surface of the crystal ball. And the name holography derives from optical holography, which is a technique that physicists have developed to encode three-dimensional objects on two-dimensional photographic plates, where when you look at them, you see a three-dimensional object, even though the whole information is stored only in 2 dimensions.
Okay, so you mentioned the idea of emergence, and I'm sure that the current work you're working on with Dr. Pavlov and Mr. Melikin involving wormholes is related to the idea of emergence. But is there any relationship to traversable wormholes, or the idea that has fascinated the public with the ability to having interstellar travel? Can you comment on the likelihood of wormholes, or how your work is related to traversable wormholes?
Yeah, so wormholes are particular space-time configurations that people have speculated about, and in the science fiction literature, they usually are used to travel faster than the speed of light. So you enter one region and then immediately you come out in the other position, and they will allow you to travel faster than the speed of light. We think that such wormholes do not exist. They somehow violate some of the basic principles of relativity. So early in the 20th century, there were some principles that were laid out. These are the principles of special relativity, general relativity, and quantum mechanics. And these principles have held on for, let's say, 100 years, even though many new particles and new types of matter were discovered. So when we analyze nature, we think that we might discover new particles, such as when we discovered the Higgs boson or the top quark recently. And but all these particles that have been created and that we expect to discover we normally describe them using matter that obeys those principles. And if you wanted a wormhole where you can travel faster than the speed of light, you would have to violate those basic principles. Now, what is possible is to have a wormhole where going through the wormhole would take longer than going through the ambient space, at least as seen from someone from outside. However, the interesting feature is that for the observer that goes through the wormhole, time slows down, and it could be that the time it takes the observer to traverse a wormhole, as felt by himself or herself, is much shorter. So, for example, you could have a wormhole where you traverse it in, let's say, 1 second, and from the point of view of someone who's sitting outside, it's 10,000 years, for example. So those wormholes are not possible with the particles. They require some matter that is not part of the particles we've discovered so far, but they are still particles and objects that obey the general principles of relativity and quantum physics, and might possibly exist and have escaped detection. I don't think it's very likely that they exist, but at least they are possible with the general principles. So those are the things that are possible with the general physics principles that we know today. And so we have some example of a configuration where that is possible. But yeah,
not entirely pessimistic. Some possibility there.
Well, there is some possibility, but it requires many coincidences. So I'm not sure. I don't think it's likely. Should not bet on it. But I think it's interesting in trying to explore. The main interest is in trying to explore what is possible with the general principles of quantum mechanics and general relativity. Because there are some things that are not possible with those principles. And since we haven't discovered all the particles that exist in nature, we have to keep an open mind in what is possible.
That's true. And there's so much more potential still to discover within those frameworks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So,
do you have any more questions?
No, I think that's very nice.
Okay, I will ask you more general questions. I'm interested in, since you've been traveling to the United States to gain more knowledge, do you think how collaboration with foreign colleagues helped your studies?
Well, certainly I started my studies in Argentina, so it was with people in Argentina, and then of course going to the US helped me be in touch with many more leading scientists and colleagues and so on, and that certainly helped me a lot in developing my career and in learning new things. And the physics community is fairly international. There are people in various countries, and even in Europe and in other countries. I have colleagues in Argentina who are still in Argentina and are still doing leading science, and they're making important contributions to international science. So if your question is whether someone who is not in the, let's say, let's call them main countries can contribute, yes, they can contribute in an important way.
And in your opinion, why international cooperation and knowledge transfer are important for the scientific development and discoveries?
Well, I mean, because you really can draw on a bigger pool of knowledge. So each person has some limited access to what they can imagine, what they can think about. But by collaborating and talking to other people, you have access to their points of view and their specialized knowledge. And in this way, you can go much further. They can solve problems they can help you solve problems you don't know how to solve. You can help them solve their problems. So the progress in science is not proportional to the number of scientists, but is somehow a bigger power of the number of scientists. Maybe it's proportional to the square of the number of scientists.
The scientific community doesn't have any borders, that it's something that, especially now since the outbreak of pandemic, you can actually collaborate together, even though you're not present in the same country.
Yeah,
would you agree with that or disagree?
Well, I agree that now, despite the pandemic, in fact, maybe thanks to the pandemic, we've developed better online tools to talk to each other and to have seminars. There are, for example, previously scientific talks would take place at the university or at some specific research location, but now they take place in cyberspace. They, you give a talk, and anyone from the rest of the world can come into the Zoom call, for example, and hear the talk, ask questions, etc. So that, I think, has increased the dissemination of knowledge.
Because that wasn't as common before the pandemic, so now it's much more common.
Yeah, now it's much more common, and I think probably when internet tools become better, it will become even better, I think. So that, I think, would be one of the beneficial aspects of this terrible pandemic.
Michael actually said that he has been more productive during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's true. Forced introversion, right?
Yeah, that is true. So I think in some things we are using our time more efficiently, and I think it's forced us to question how we do things, and I think that will be one good effect of this.
Well, I think we're done with our questions. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to see you online on our Nobel Fest in October 1st till 4th. And I think Michael will be talking to you more during those days.
Okay, wonderful. So best wishes to you all.
It's great to have your time, and thank you so much.
Sure.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.